the likelihood that you're going to be the next huge thing. I'm not saying don't shoot for it, but I'm saying don't expect it. Keep hustling. Like you're always going to have to fight.
I don't regret my life at all. You know, I got to where I'm at through this life. But if I had to go back, I would have gone to art school. It's the one passion I have that I wish I had done it.
There's a lot of assumptions behind saying don't worry about the end goal, worry about the journey to someone who's starving.
Why are you frustrated at this stage? Because this is the part where you're learning and mistakes are supposed to happen. This is inherent and built into that experience.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Writing Prose, episode 19. I'm just going to keep talking and ignore everyone else on my panel.
Yep, because you can mute us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely can. I'm, of course, Shae. We've got our amazing panel of Cy, who just got a quip in that I didn't hear, you bitch.
I said unless you respond to us, then you can't mute us, because then you're just talking to yourself like a
That's okay.
crazy old cat.
I'm okay looking crazy.
Why stop?
Of course, we've also got Gib, who obviously has a statement about me being crazy and how it's not just a look. Don't even. I saw your face.
It's not just a look, it's a lifestyle. Gibby, we're getting you WD-40.
I know, sorry. I was going to mute that as I leaned back. I was like, oh, crap. Sorry.
And of course, we have Mr. Eric Canete. How you doing, Eric?
Hello, I'm well. I'm here for this roller coaster ride. Thank you for having me. always.
Wherever this thing goes.
Roller coaster of love.
Oh no.
That's a song.
No.
It is a song.
It is a song. It's terrible.
All
It
right,
was in a
Alright,
movie that
so
I can't remember.
I'm in.
So, yeah.
It's a great song.
So one of the things that we were kind of talking about, and it's interesting because out of this panel, I am the baby, right? But because I grew up in Utah,
Giant baby.
I'm a
Utah
huge
baby.
baby. No, because I grew up in Utah. Everything in Utah is like 5 to 10 years behind the
that
rest
true?
of the country. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's like
So,
Canada. They just got grunge music.
It's really weird. Like Utah is behind on all of the trends and the fashion and like what's hot. They're always several years behind. So as you guys are sitting here and we were talking earlier about like, you know, music and stuff that you grew up with and influences and all of that. I have all the same influences despite the fact that I'm a significant amount younger than a lot of you guys, which is kind of
I like how she leans into the significant part. I was
Yes.
more digging.
I'm saying it's not like 2
Significantly.
years. It's not like 2 years. It's more than 2. That's what
Again,
we'll
it's
say.
the
It's more
way
than
she
2
said
years
more
younger.
than 2. It's the weird. There's like white chin hairs in my face.
I mean,
Oh
if
yeah,
we're gonna
like,
judge
if you
this
see
off
him,
of
if you
whites,
see me
I
in
got
purpose,
white
there's
hair,
so many
too.
grays in here that's more like salt and cumin than it is anything
no,
else.
it's-
So you'll.
My point is when she said it, more grew in.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I felt
So-
an urge to kick her off my lawn. Yeah.
You know, that happens with my generation, apparently. What I was going to say is I think that it's really interesting because we were talking about how people are constantly wanting something better for the generation after them. But then when that generation gets something better, then people are like, you have it so easy. And it's like, isn't that kind of the goal? Like, wasn't that what we were aiming for? And I'm interested to hear kind of from a writing perspective, because what the world kind of was for indie writers way back when, you know, we were teens versus what it is now, it's like a totally different world. And I kind of want to get into that, and I want to get into what you guys want for the generations that come after you. Despite the fact that I know that Eric probably doesn't care because he's this generation and
Just
his
me.
success. That's what we're worried about.
That's somebody else's problem, not my problem. Kicking that can down the road for somebody else. Okay, so there's a
like, "This is
caveat to
your
that,
kid."
right? I think a part of it has a lot to do with a foundational understanding, and I don't know if that's being taught or being skipped, because people typically just want to get to, hey, how do I get that effect, right? I'm talking about art now, but I think it's applicable in writing too. How do I get to that level of polish, and what are the ways for me to get there? And people's eyes glaze over when I say, well, you kind of have to go and have a basic foundational and realistic grasp of how to set that up first. And people,
Right.
I think I've met more than a fair share of people who just go, okay, that's great, that's cool, all of that stuff, blah blah blah. But let me just get to the end. Let me just get to the final interpretation, or at least the closest to the end point where my goals are. And I think yeah, you're missing that critical. And this is the part where I think people misconstrue that. You're missing the critical hardship that happens in the beginning when you have to kind of have an understanding of how to unlock that, right? Because you get to the end so quickly. So I think that's where the get off my lawn comes from. Where it's you guys have it so much easier, or you don't have it, you don't know how this works, blah, blah, blah. It's it's not coming from ultimately an old man yelling at clouds kind of place, although in my case it is. But I really think it has a lot to do with holding, sort of holding a mirror up to somebody and go you understand that you got to that really easy place because you used the formalized version in order to get that easy place, not because you went and discovered it for yourself.
Right.
And your
Yeah.
discovery is as cosmetic and as sort of first layer as possible.
Well, so I think a really good point, tying into that, is when you have to do things kind of the old-fashioned way, or the way that people used to write, the way that people used to draw, you learn a lot more about putting stuff together and forming things appropriately and pacing and all of those major building blocks that then makes it so using the shortcuts and the easier methods really are just shortcuts and easier methods, as opposed to phoning it in and then wondering why maybe their written work feels hollow, doesn't
Sure.
feel like it has that kind of life and body to it. And it's, I hate to say it, but it's because you haven't ever focused on what it takes to actually write that. And instead you've gone to, there's various websites that can help get you a logical pathway for your story. You type in a couple of things and it'll give you prompts, and then you go, and then you wonder why your prompts don't feel full. But it's because you're getting it artificially as a shortcut, which is okay
No.
when you have the base, but you have to have that base in order for you to really benefit from it.
Let me add to that real quick, and I think it runs in parallel to what you're talking about, Shae, which is, my wife is learning how to sew now, but it's weird. She's got the high-end sewing machine and something called a serger, which I've never heard of before, but
They're fantastic.
it's up there,
It's
and I
it's
was
what
the
makes
heck?
the leg seams on jeans.
Don't get
Yeah.
me started. I didn't know what that
How
was. I just know it's
How it's
sewing
all
machine.
folded over and cut
Yeah.
and
And it's
Makes them really
nice and
nice.
clean and it's beautiful,
Yep.
right? It feels like a professional sort of machine. Anyway, here she is just starting, and she has that already. Here's my point. She got she's making Halloween costumes for our kids, but it's from patterns from the 60s and 70s, because that's the aesthetic that she likes. Now, as she's learning, she gets frustrated because it's not exactly how she envisions it in her head, but also two, how it looks in the instructions, right? It's a little bit confusing. It's a little bit, and I thought to myself, why are you frustrated at this stage? Because this is the part where you're learning, and mistakes are supposed to happen. This is inherent and built into that experience. So my point is, sometimes people don't want to experience that frustration, or they don't have an internal mechanism to deal with that frustration, not realizing that's good that you're frustrated, because that's the experience of well, how do I not get there next time? It builds in this mechanism, this coping mechanism, to go how do I deal with that? Oh, that's a mistake, right? That's cool, but next time it builds onto that muscle, if that makes any sense. And that's applicable to writing too, I think.
Yeah.
I think that this kind of harkens back to what we discussed maybe 3 or 13 episodes ago about how I think we were specifically talking. Well, I was talking about learning to draw, and how when it doesn't turn out exactly how I want it to, or exactly how I'm envisioning it, that turns into something that is incredibly disheartening and demotivating and stuff like that. And I think that that's a perfect example in another medium, and it's kind of universal. I've found that when something doesn't go right, unless you have no other choice than to keep pushing through, a lot of times you'll just say, well, gee, I'm shit at this. It's time to find something else.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Well,
and go ahead, Drew.
I was gonna say, like, I found a pin that is ridiculously motivational, and it really shouldn't be because it's just a fucking pin on a jacket. But it says on there, brave enough to try something new. And I like that kind of thing really sits like well with me because I'm always a perfectionist. I always want like everything to be absolutely perfect the first time through. I write, like, think of stories more like Gib does, where you kind of start writing, see where it goes, and then you go back and refine, and you go back and refine, and go back and refine.
Yeah.
But I want, in my head, I want it to be I write it and it's perfect. And so I want that one and done, and I want to feel like that. And then I go back and I'm like, man, I'm such a garbage writer because I have to keep redoing this to make it better. But it's because there's so much that you want to try and put in there, and you want it to feel organic. And there's ways that you can hint at things and then be like, oh, if I would have said this 5 pages earlier, that would have been a lot more impactful and it wouldn't have felt shoehorned.
Yeah.
You know,
Let me
and you can't really know it until you're there.
Let me ask Gib about that. And in your experiences, Gib, how many times have you gotten the one where you're like, man, I'm just going to step to the plate and crank this all the way to the far end of this field, home runs every time? How many times have you done that?
How do you get
If you
to
say
Carnegie
all the
Hall?
time, I'm going to...
How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Yeah, exactly.
Practice.
I was
You
going to
don't-
give you map
you s-
directions.
Yeah, well, that's whether that's the old song "Kids, What's Wrong with These Kids Today" from like the 1940s, or to now. It's you don't step up to the plate and hit a home run, and very, very, very few people do. I mean, it can happen. You can't say never. I mean, I'm sure there's an artist right now who is like better than any of us will ever be at anything. Just because they're just born to it. That being said, everybody else has got to practice. The beautiful thing is there are 3 current generations: those that are, those that were, and those that will be. And so if I'm writing now, my predecessors will look at my shit and go, you could use some work. And I will look at the generation behind me and go, you could use some work. The up-and-comers will look at me or look at old, and we'll all argue amongst ourselves about who was better. And that's the beautiful thing about multi-generational art in general. Because you have experiences of the past, whether that's physical, or you can go back and look at Rembrandt, you can go look at Picasso, you can look at your own stuff, and you can look at like who's up-and-coming, and that's gives you influence. I don't want to sound so jaded as the old man, to look at everybody and go, you suck, and you should learn the way I learned, But it's kind of like, does anybody else watch? Because I'm literally addicted to watching reruns of Ink Master, and I love when they tear the tattoos apart. And it's because you have someone who's like, I've only been tattooing for 2.5 to 5.5 years, and they've got a cool style, but they don't know how to tattoo traditionally, meaning hard outlines. Here's your fundamentals. And back in the old guys sitting up on the panel, like, if I mess this up, someone would literally slap me in the back of the head. You people have thin skin, and they mock the younger generation and all that stuff. And that type of thinking translates to all art mediums, And so you can think you're a great writer until your editor gets a hold of it. And
that is
there's your
true.
first, I mean, your mom can tell you it's great, your best friend can tell you it's great, your dog can tell you it's great, and your editor says, you don't know your ash from a hole in the ground. And here's where you're wrong on this, and this. This is stilted, this is bad dialogue, this is hackneyed, this is you literally lifted this from a Buffy episode. So you need to work on your skills. Horrible. So it all comes across we have built-in checks and balance systems. We tend to get grumpy because, again, I'll use because like I said, I'm addicted to the show. One of the older tattoo guys, like this Instagram generation of tattooers who have like iPad Pros who can like pull up reference images and trace over them. They don't know what it's like to do what we had to do. I'm like, yeah, because now we have technology. Like there was no indie publishing. There was no real indie publishing in a broader spectrum until the internet. Yeah, you had zines, and you had H.P. Lovecraft was like dime store crap books, like he wasn't a big publisher, but his stories, racist as he is, lived on for like 100+ years, and having the idea and going for it, but learning from your lessons and working your craft is what survives. It's not being a flash in the pan. Eric is like, bless him, is like, I don't care about the next generation because I care about my work right now. Now, that being said, I'm sure you have given tips to people.
Sure.
Along the way. Exactly.
Plenty.
So
he offered to teach us how to draw. I'm just going to
I still want to do that. I want to do a show
I
with
want
Eric.
Every episode that gets brought up, and every episode we express our rabid interest in it. And every episode Eric smiles and he nods and he's like, yeah, we'll have to do that sometime.
Next
and that's where it sits.
Episode 20, we're doing it.
How about this? Instead of like a little tangent to our topic, but like we'll say the next time we're guaranteed all of us will be on together.
Eric was never seen again.
No, we pick a thing, and the three of us, like Eric
forever.
gives us a subject to draw. Draw this and submit your work, and he will critique us.
Oh my
Okay.
god.
I have zero problem with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm submitting Bulgy.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah.
Don't make it a clown with a bulge, Eric. Just make it anything else.
It's gonna turn out looking like a clown with a bulge. I told you to draw a tree. Well, this is what it is in my head.
This is what a tree looks like to me.
But we have generations of people coming up. Yeah, we tend to think the younger generation has thinner skin, just like our forebears thought we did when we were kids.
Yeah.
And
That's
I am sure that
undoubtedly true.
I'm sure that Eric, growing up in the industry the way he did, had talent. But I'm sure you had more than one person say, "Do you know what you're doing? Because you got skills, but it looks like you don't know what you're doing." And fake it till you make it, and all those type of things. And these are lessons that we learn. Like you said, it's the you don't get stronger without lifting heavier weights. You can lift the same amount of weight every day, and you will never get stronger. You will just get repetitions, but you won't get actual strength until you increase that workload, tear down the muscle fibers, rebuild those muscle fibers, and bulk grows. That's literally the foundations of strength training. And that's the same thing with your soul. That's the same thing with your craft. You have to tear it a little bit in order for it to heal stronger. And writing's the same way. When I first started, I look back on my initial work. I'm like, I'm not talking like teenage writing or angsty poetry writing. I mean, literally sitting down to actually try to craft just a scene, and going, I don't know where my camera's at. Like my mental camera, I don't like. You're just describing a scene, but is it a static wide shot using TV terminology, or movie? Am I zoomed in? Like, do I know literally where the camera's moving around the room? And if I don't know that, it won't translate to my story. A lot of people like to write in, Tolkien-esque, here's the taste of the meals and the flowers and the trees and all that stuff, but it doesn't tell you what's happening in the scene. Because if your scene is human interaction or creature interaction, you need to show that. And you need to do it in such a way that your reader's no longer reading a book and they're sucked into the work. And it's something I still strive to do because I've read far better writers than myself, and I still want to do what they can do.
Yeah.
And I'm not there yet, and I might never be. But generations change. Look at who was forced to read like the classics in high school, like the Melvilles.
Everybody.
And yeah, exactly. And look at that type of writing versus like whatever you read for fun now. I'm not saying like the difference between Moby Dick and Arc Athena, but I am saying that look at the style of writing. There was no TV then. This was literature. This was a tome that was dense because you didn't have 30 other books to go through. No, you had this book, maybe 3 others. There was no Netflix. There was no, even when I was a kid, we had 3 whole channels, and then we got cable. We got more, So there were no other distractions. There was plowing the field and reading Moby Dick. That's all you got,
Yeah.
I think, but in that comparison, I think it's not the formula, but the foundation, the fundamentals are still there, right? Style, era nuance, that changes, right? Like taste changes, but when it comes to I have an understanding of where this narrative is going, how possibly it could go, and you're talking about the immersion component of it. It all comes from an understanding of those fundamentals, right? The flavor changes, but getting you there, that still is pretty strong across the board, right? That has not changed, and I think people skip that, right, without understanding why that's so important. And so that's what I always sort of like hone in on, to go like, don't worry, the polish, when we have a conversation, when I have conversations about, and this goes back to art, so forgive me, when I have conversations with people about like style, how do I discover my own style? I go like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't have a good answer for you, because that's all going to be informed based on the things that you pick up and experiment with. So the style part, I go like, I don't know if you should really focus on that, unless within your body of work you go like, I have a great, I have the full sort of like utility box of everything that I have a great handle on. I have a pretty comprehensive handle on. Style comes after, in my opinion. So I think people want to get to the style first before they want to have understanding of and full understanding of that utility. And I think that's in writing, to sort of appreciate, I don't have a style because I don't have a full I don't have a full grasp of the utility kit yet.
Well, I also think that style is something that comes with practice. The more you write, the more you do, and this is true in both writing and in art. The more you do it, the more the things that you enjoy doing start to become more apparent, and your style is born.
Sure.
But I think another huge issue that people are experiencing with this is that when you're looking at, because right now, especially when you're looking at this younger generation, they're focused on, how do I make a job that is going to pay my bills, that is going to be lucrative enough, that it's not going to feel like I am just dying in an office building.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
The idea of working in an office building for this younger generation is akin to a death sentence. They are so vehemently against it that they are finding whatever they can, whether it's, I'll have a pop-up food truck, and that's what I'll do with my life, and I'll learn how to cook like carnitas really well or something. Like, they're looking for those things that for our generation was largely, those are pipe dreams. Very few people actually make it doing that, and you trying to pursue that is foolish. So you should go with something safe, and then if you end up in a position where you can do this in a safer aspect, then sure, maybe you can be that one, but probably not. And that's what most of us grew up with, is like, you're not special. You're not
Damn
going
it, Dad,
to be.
I thought you've been dead since 2003.
Right?
God
Exactly.
bless. Oh, wow.
But
I was getting flashbacks during that.
well, it's because that's what we all grew up with. That was the narrative of most of our
because
childhoods.
that's what's taught then, exactly. But that was taught to our forebears, which was taught to them. Dreams are for the affluent. If you are not born into like such incredible affluence where you don't have to worry about things like meals and rent and things like that, then you have the opportunity. And I'm not trying to turn this into a one percenters kind of thing, but like chasing look at a lot of people that make it into the big six publishing, for example, tend to come from the background where they went to a decent school. They met the right professors, and they got the right internships, the right scholarships, they met the right people, which got them the next step. You see every so often there's one person, like, they were indie and they met someone at a convention, they lucked into it. But again, it comes down to like a lot of it's luck or connections more than anything else. It has nothing to do with your skill most of the time.
It's almost always who you know. It's
right.
It's who you network with. But the problem is because we spend so much time focusing on, like, in order for you to make it as an indie author, you have to know what your genre is. If you don't know what genre you're writing to, how the hell are you ever going to make it as an indie author, right? If you want to make it as an artist, you have to have a discernible style that is uniquely yours, and that is what is going to put you leaps and bounds above all the other artists out there. That's what people are told. And so when they can't find their style and they can't find their voice because they just simply haven't done it long enough to have that become apparent, they get panicked, they get frustrated, and that's they instantly think that it means that you're going to fail, not realizing there's a lot of artists. I've been watching a shit ton of YouTube, like artist YouTube videos. So people doing, video like vlogs and studio tours and unpacking my merch and stuff like that. And I've been watching all of this stuff, and I've seen a large majority of people who do art that I would consider at least on par, if not a little below, what my ability to do art is. The difference is they do it full time, they make a living, and it's because they found what worked for them, what didn't work for them. They were persistent, which is something that a lot of people now are having a hard time with because they want that instant gratification. And because of the age of the internet, right? Everything is a lot more accessible. But the big problem is people also are only showing you what they want you to see. So people are looking at this, 28-year-old young girl who draws like so, but it's kind of cute and kitschy, and she's making 6 figures no problem, and they're like, well, what the hell, why can't I do that? I could easily do this. And it's like, you don't understand that this girl's been doing this since she was 13. She has had multiple different businesses that have crashed and burned, and the difference is every time one of them crashed and burned,
they didn't step up to the plate and hit a grand slam. You actually hit on two very important topics during that speech of yours, and I thank
that
you for
rant.
that.
Yes.
Well, no, it wasn't a rant. It was actually very elocuted, better than I speak. The first thing you hit on was I looked up these videos when we were kids.
Yeah.
There were no videos. You had the encyclopedia, the Funkin' Wagnalls, Webster's Dictionary. You had very limited resources to find things. You either had to read a book that you like and copy their style, read a comic that you like and copy their art, read the comic and copy their writing style, but that's all you had. So, and I will say this about the current generation more so than my own. I used to say, how do I do this? My dad would say, look it up. I'm like, oh God. So I got to go to the outdated encyclopedias. But
you go to the library and use the Dewey Decimal System to find some shit.
Exactly. If you don't know what A312.6 means, then yeah, exactly.
Right, then you're screwed.
Right. But my point is this generation doesn't even bother. They don't have to ask. They have the culmination of the world's information at their fingertips. Granted, it's filtered through different ways, but I learned to remodel a bathroom by watching videos. This has been the greatest thing in the world. How do I do blank? Look it up. Oh, here's 1,000 videos on how to do blank. Some of it good.
That's how I tore apart an engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've done exactly lawnmower repair because I watched videos because there's some good ones what you need to do now to get underneath here. Now don't do that. I'm like, okay, I won't do that.
Don't do that. I won't do that. I see why you don't do that.
Thank you, Jethro. I appreciate that. And your mold is gorgeous. But this generation has no fear of just looking it up, and more so than our generation ever did. So how dangerous we would have been if we grew up now. But it's I can't bemoan that. I can't.
Right.
It's like the fact that they're drawing digitally. How many when Reedy's drawing on her Cintiq over there doing her thing. Imagine having to go back. It's here's pen and paper. Now do it on the blue lines. Now do it on the trace lines. Now do this line. That digital that thing. Wacom and Cintiq. You just do it. Oh, I don't like that. Change that. Wacom, however you say it.
Wacom.
I say Wacom.
Whack-em. Whack-em all
the manufacturer says Wacom.
Well, then screw everybody but me.
We turned it into Wacom.
Well,
okay.
I mean, it sounded ridiculous the other way. I mean, that's not something you want to invest. I spent $800 on a Wacom. Nope.
So to Gibbs' point,
kids also spent. Grandparents spent $300 to play with their Wii. So
can I add to what Gib was saying? So I think part of it, and I think this is less discussed, is that sure we I can't imagine having access to everything that I often talk about this too. I'm like, in contrast to what I used to have back in the day, the information, the data, the whatever it is that you guys have access to now, man, you guys have it so far. You guys are, the advantages that you have are light years ahead of what I had. But I think that's also a cause of anxiety because of the fact that they have so much access to everything. Why isn't this successful? You're telling me that I have the tools to be successful. I have access to it. I have accessed it. I have implemented it. And now it's not any more successful than, artist A, B, and C, writer 1, 2, 3, right?
No, and it's worse. It's like yes. I have access to more at my fingertips in this moment just because it's true at this moment, even more than 5 seconds ago, than any other person trying to do this thing in history. And yet, I am significantly worse already. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like just because you have access doesn't necessarily mean you can implement it well. And I think that's where it just comes back to, but for me, that's where good mentorship comes from. And I know this is a sidetrack to what we're talking about, but having access to it versus like, how do I now use those tools? Like, Gib, you can look up a lawnmower, right, and how to repair it. But inherently, before the video came out, which was just a tool, you were like, I think I have a basic understanding of how this thing could work. I just don't know the nuances of it, right? I think that's where people get stuck, is they go like, I have all these tools. I don't know how to like combine them together to be the cut above. And the honest to goodness truth is, and this may sound like this sounds very doomsday, but a good portion of you are not going to be a cut above.
Yeah.
It's rare that somebody comes along and becomes the exemplary. But if that's the end goal, is and I'll taper this off, I promise. Right? Like, I don't want it to be sound like in the end you're going to die, which is also true, right?
I mean, it is.
For me, the goal, what do you call it? The enriching experience is going through it, and I think people forget that. Right, the enriching experience is going through the thing that you're trying to be great. The trying to be great part is like, that's a nice icing on the cake. That's a nice cherry on top. But for me, where I prevent myself from going into that very, very dark place is I go like, this is what I love going through these mistakes, and I think that component often gets lost in the search to becoming great, because everyone wants great like right now.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is it's like, for as an example and as an aside, Sai and I have been taking a lot of time reviewing Red Valkyrie, our growth, and how we can bolster our business and our company, which is partially why I've been watching so much of art YouTube, because I'm looking at, okay, how do these people that have incredibly simplistic art or incredibly simplistic viewpoints and stuff, how are they succeeding? And what parts of that would fit with what we do? And in all honesty, as much as like, yeah, I would love to have the security that Red Valkyrie is definitely going to be sustaining, is going to be a business that is going to pay my bills when I'm no longer in the military, and this can be what I do. As much as I would love that security, I would be lying if I said that it wasn't a little bit invigorating to do all of this legwork, do all of this research, start implementing small parts of it, and watching that growth happen. And then that almost becomes a new addiction, more so than I want this to be a knockout success. It becomes, I want this to keep happening. I want to keep growing and learning and bringing something new. And just this week, we had a couple people, like, you know, doing cosplays and stuff like I do for all of these shows. And I had one show where they were blown away because I had taken my cosplay and dropped it into like a CGI background and added some lighting effects and stuff. And they were like, holy shit, that is awesome. And I was like, to me, that's so cool. And then I had the next show was, you are the first person to ever cosplay any of my characters. That is the coolest thing ever. And
yeah, and he's on book 7. So
yeah, and he's on this was for book 7, 8, 9 in his campaign, and he was like, this is the first time anyone's ever cosplayed any of my characters. I never thought I'd really see it because his characters are all really cartoony and they're like old school 90s cereal, you know, mascots and stuff. And he's like, who's gonna cosplay that? And here I was in this giant, you know,
That's so cool.
a giant box pretending to be a robot because that's what he had, and it was fun.
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
like those are the things that you end up living for. And I look at stuff and I go, you know, okay, that cosplay, that was garbage. That was a shit cosplay for me. Like, I definitely can do way better than what I did. But it was still fun. It still accomplished what I needed it to accomplish, and perfection isn't the end all be all. And having that mentality when it comes to writing and finding your niche and growing your business is paramount, because the likelihood that you are going to be the next George R.R. Martin or Tolkien or anything like that, the likelihood that you're going to be the next huge thing. I'm not saying don't shoot for it, but I'm saying don't expect it. Right?
Yeah.
Keep hustling. Like you're always going to have to fight to get your name anywhere on that ticket, you know, that you're going to have to fight to get anyone to put you in the bookstore. Keep having that kind of fight and that kind of passion. And then if you end up making it, then everyone's going to be like, dude, I remember when they were little. I remember all of this stuff. I watched them grow and this is where they ended up. And that's, to me, that's a lot more important, having that journey and having people that were with you along the way than the end goal ends up being like, yeah, I'd love to be a millionaire, but
well, that's the thing. You have to enjoy your ride. You have to enjoy the process, because
if you're not enjoying your ride, you're not living.
like exactly like Eric said, you know, like a lot of you, he goes, a lot of you are just not that, you're below. And that's actually a great barrier to entry, because it's like, if you want to, this is a threshold minimum you have to meet, you know, and a lot of people like will quit after that because I assume what's the term? Okay, are you all familiar with choice overload?
No.
It's
Yes.
a psychological term. So some people will say that some psychologists will break it down like the number 12 is usually one of the magic numbers, and other people debate it. But like if you have 12 or more choices, sometimes 7 or more, your brain just shuts down. You don't, I can't make a decision, and I just go with what I know. You know, some people like to try something new, but like if you're like, how many times you're sitting on Netflix if you have time and blading through 100 things just to watch something you've already seen before, because it's your brain shuts down after too many choices. Some people have a hard time picking shampoo because there's too many choices. Now add that to comics, books, movies, music, whatever, and it's like when there's so many choices, I'll just go to the thing I know. That's why people tend to stick in their same genres. People stick to the same authors, because this is safe. I know this is comforting, and getting people to stand out, that's part of it. Like you said, like whether it's your business, whether it's like a Red Valkyrie or an Eric Canete as an artist, or me as an indie writer, you have to come in. It's okay. The water's fine. Trust me, I got you. And how do you express that? You know, like before the internet, you had to sit at a convention table in a tri-state area and hope one of like the 500 people that come by is going to like pick you up. Now the internet, you can like you have a much further reach. You know, like it's. But at the same time, everybody's reaching. Everybody's arms are out. And when a million people are screaming, how do you hear a single voice? Yeah. And it's usually, sometimes it's skill, sometimes it's luck. And when you look at the person that got lucky, good for you. Fucking good for you. Yeah. Fucker. Oh yeah, rises all boats. Or something about a rising tide. Oh, it doesn't. I'm still down here. This sucks. You know, you have to just take your lumps. And that's something the generation, we have to keep pounding away at them. It's like, you have to take your lumps, because it does make you stronger. Go ahead.
May I introduce something to the conversation? It was reflected back at me. I can't remember how many years ago, and there may be some truth to it, but I want to get your guys' insight, which is the level of confidence that we are speaking from comes from a certain monochrome of success in the fields that we've tried. We can't be, as they told me, it's like, you're only as confident as you are. It's because you've had some successes at it. You can say from a very experienced position that has success, and not built in, but that you garnered, that you can say, don't worry about the end goal, worry about the journey. And I was like, that's interesting. I wonder if I would be thinking the same way if I've gotten 0% successful in this space. How can I broadcast at this frequency when somebody goes like, I don't even receive at that frequency? You know, it's weird. I want to get your guys' insight. I want to get your guys' feedback.
There's a certain, I don't want to call it arrogance. There's a lot of assumptions behind saying don't worry about the end goal, worry about the journey, to someone who's starving. The end goal is that you eat. The end goal is that you can feed your family. The end goal is that you have a roof over your head. So saying don't worry about that end goal, it assumes a lot, I think. And for people who are struggling, who are trying to find their niche, whether it's writing or art or what have you, they want to find their thing. And saying don't worry about the end goal, I think really undercuts the fact that there is a level of desperation to people to find what their thing is going to be. And so I think you also have to approach it from the standpoint of you have to be able to be real with people and to be able to say, look, I see what you're doing. You're horrible. we can do a few exercises to see if any talent is ever going to appear, but then maybe it's time to move on. And I don't think that we're really willing to have that conversation. I'm going to use the phrase as a society anymore. I don't think we're willing to have that conversation with people, because I think we naturally assume that they're too fragile. Look, I make fucking stick figures and they sell, haha, isn't that funny? But I want to, but they, whatever. So I want to know if there is the potential for talent there. And if not, I don't want to waste my time doing, X, Y, and Z to try to broaden a skill that's never going to be more than a very journeyman's approach to things. Because I tell everyone I'm 29 years old. I am not 29 years old.
No.
Okay, if I'm gonna look to do something and to get good at it, to get really good at it, you're gonna want, I hate to say something so short as 10 years, but I think of how old I'm gonna be in 10 years. Do I still want to be just honing things at that point? I mean, shit. So the time for me to find my thing is rapidly diminishing. So I don't want to sit here and
you Cy, God bless you. I literally just had this argument, not this argument. This almost verbatim this discussion with my wife last night. I was once again watching Ink Master on Paramount while I was, but I put it on because it's banal. I mean, nothing against the artist, but it's because sometimes I have my laptop open, sometimes I have my legal pads open when I'm jotting down notes or I'm storyboarding or plotting or whatever. But I looked at it and I was like, I turned to her and I said, because it was my birthday yesterday, and I'm like, I don't regret my life at all. I got to where I'm at through this life. But if I had to go back, I would have gone to art school because it's the one passion I have that I wish I had done it. But I can't. She's like, you can start now. I'm like, no, I can't. I can, but I can't. You can totally do it like that old person that goes back to school and feels good, but I can't.
You can, but you don't want to. That's the
I still want to. I still want to do art.
You don't have the same spark or drive that you would need in order to.
I cut Cy off. I apologize.
That's okay. And but just to really quickly add on before I circle back, there's so much of the experience to be had of, I went to art school when I was 16 years old because I believed in myself. And now here I am in my early 20s and I get to have all these experiences as an early 20-something. That's different than here I am in my 70s, just having finished art school. Let me drag my ass to a convention where all this stuff is happening. And you know what? I'm going to need a nap by 3:30. it's a different thing.
You have to wait until 70. I need a nap at 1 o'clock, 1:30.
I said 3:30.
Yesterday it was great. From 1 to 2:15, like little nappy nap for me.
Yeah, exactly.
So good, you guys.
I'm trying to convert Shae to the anytime is nap time, but what I'm saying is we have to be willing to have that discussion, and we have to believe that we can broach that topic and be able to tell somebody, look, this isn't your thing, without either them being so, truly emotionally traumatized, not just, oh my God, you've murdered me, but also that we ourselves can survive being that kind of judge. Do you know what I mean? Like, Eric, you have tremendous artistic talent, right? I would trust you to tell me if what I'm doing reflected any artistic talent.
Yeah.
Okay. But the other thing is, you as an artist, as a professional, okay, can you survive giving that level of feedback today? Or is that going to lead people to labeling you as someone who is too harsh a critic, who destroys people's dreams, who maybe is an abrasive person? Maybe you wouldn't want to work with him, or stuff like that. There's two sides to that, and I think we really have to grapple with that so that people aren't throwing away their lives on liberal arts bullshit that they have no talent at.
Sure.
Some people have to be plumbers. Okay, you might dream of being an artist, but if you have 99% nerve damage in your hand, maybe that's not going to be your calling. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can do it with your teeth, but something.
In those, what do you call it? In those like in that small space, I can be like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
Hey everyone, it's Shae here. Sorry to break in the middle of this awesome conversation, but this topic was so good that we actually just kept going well past what our normal Writing Prose episodes are. So we decided we were going to cut it into 2, and if you want to hear more about what we have to say, I guess you're just going to have to tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Red Valkyrie, ring that bell, and go check out our merch store. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of Writing Prose. If you enjoyed our content, then you know the drill. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to support us in other ways, then you can always become a channel member or shop our merch store. Red Valkyrie is currently accepting anonymous, fan-submitted stories for their on-air review later in the season. So if you want some feedback, send your submissions to redvalkyrie.writingprose@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.